Good morning, everybody. According to my watch, it's 10 o'clock, so I'd like to welcome you here and ask you to please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I will acknowledge that I'm not familiar with how you usually do the roll call, so if somebody can clarify that for me.
So basically, all the members just state their name, and then if there is a conflict of interest.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Marty Carpenter, no conflict.
Holly Powell, no conflict.
Bob Howell, no conflict.
Antoinette Kelly, no conflict.
Susan T. Adams, no conflict.
And so there were no public comments submitted for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. That's my next. So next on the agenda for our whole business. Before we get to the items that are on the agenda, let me just offer a reminder of the format. This comes from the handbook for board of elections members on page 14. When we get to a particular item, the director will give the background for that agenda item. The board chair will ask if there are any questions for the director on the matter. The board chair will ask for a motion and then discussion among the board members if necessary. One of the other board members will make the motion and another board member will second the motion if desired. If there's no second, the chair will state that the motion fails. The chair may ask if there's another motion. After a second, the county board will discuss the motion. Once there's no more discussion, the chair will call the vote and then announce the vote. Any questions about that? All right, thank you. First item is the board member informational packet.
So I'm hoping that the board had an opportunity to look through the packet. If there was any question or concerns, this is the opportunity for that to be discussed. Or if you want to probably meet at another time individually or together, just let me know. I'm not sure. There was a lot.
There was
So
a
it's
lot.
gonna take you a minute to kind of process anything, but if you had any questions, we're here to help to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Anybody, any questions at this point? And based on my understanding of what you said, we'll, if we have questions as our work continues and as we become more familiar with the matters, then we'll get with you individually.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The next matter is the acceptance of the director's duties.
Yes, sir. So every time we receive a new board, the director's duties have to be submitted to the board for them to be accepted for the term that you're here. And so you received a copy of the duties that the board is allowed to delegate to the director. And there's some duties that can't be delegated.
Right.
That's what's in the packet. So I'm not sure if you had opportunity to look, if you needed to make adjustments, but that after the board finalizes my duties, I send those up to the state board for my duties to be accepted.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions about the director's duties?
I have a question. Under the administration of elections, office shall include, it says in the second line, screen hire and direct training of personnel and review work of permanent staff with delegated authority of the board within the Moore County personnel policy. Several lines further down, it repeats screen hire and direct training, and there is something additional at the end of that sentence. Looks like it's a typo, that you don't need to say those same things twice.
Well, we have different types, so I do my personal staff here, and then it may be talking about co-worker staff, and I'm not sure.
I
have
think
to look
that's
at it.
the co-worker
What
is
page is
further
that?
on.
So what line? you talking?
So the second line under the administration, on the first page, it says screen hire and direct training of personnel and review work for permanent staff with delegated authority of the board within the Moore County personnel policy.
This,
So what we're thinking, I think what she's suggesting is that,
just include this sentence.
right, that we just, that we only, that we maybe, that we need only this, that second one that has the full
Okay,
text and not the first one.
okay, yes, ma'am.
And another question about that delegation. Am I correct in stating that it is the board's responsibility to hire staff for the county board of elections?
No, ma'am. So what happens is the board members select the director, and because I'm in the office with all of the daily operations, usually the board gives me that ability to hire staff. Because of the daily operations that I have to do on a consistent basis, I would know more what I would need in the office, because you're not here all the time on a regular basis.
But it's a duty we delegate to you.
No,
I mean, you do, but it's, you have to delegate it to her.
Can you tell me where it says that?
So the board does not
As
get
you-
involved in hiring and firing staff.
Because we're employees of
We're
the county.
employees.
Okay, I understand that. We don't have the right to approve employees.
Just myself, so the board hires just a director. When it comes to the daily operations, it's just basically saying that you trust me to run that office with the daily operation. However, most counties do not let their staff, their board members do it, because a lot of times you may put somebody in there that's related, try to put somebody in there that really doesn't know the operations, and then the office has an issue. So usually it is the director, because I do the daily operations, that has that ability to hire staff. And along with my business manager, we both do the interviews together. Once we do that, then we do introduce the new person to the board.
I hear you saying usually. Again, it
Because that's
sounds,
what we have done, so that's all I know. If there, I don't know any other operations where the board hires the staff.
Okay, I'm not talking about hiring, I'm talking about having approval of hires.
That is, it's not been done that way.
It's not been done, but can it be done?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I can check, but the reason why we do the director duty is so that I could just run the office without the board trying to micromanage the office. So we try to cover everything when it comes to the director duty. So it could be just the wording we placed in there, it could be changed, but normally that's not what's done.
Since I don't, well, thank you. The list of your duties is impressive and comprehensive. Could I ask what is the source of the items that were compiled into this document?
General statute.
In general statute?
Yes, sir.
I have a couple other questions.
Okay.
It talks in your duties, as well as several other places in the manual that you gave us, about you being the person who can assist in the keeping of minutes. So I'm a little bit confused about, and I know it's coming up separately under new business, the delegation of the secretarial duties. Is it something that we can delegate to you specifically,
Yes, or staff, yes,
or staff?
yes,
But that's our decision who to delegate it to?
yes.
Okay. So we could delegate it directly to you?
Now, what we have been doing in the past, we've had the tape recorder,
Yes, which we still have.
still have to record everything, then they go back and take the appropriate highlights and put it in there. The secretary trying to do all of that while being a participant in the meeting becomes a little
Sure.
difficult. So that's how it's worked, and I don't think we've had any problems with that in the past.
One other question under election administration shall include. It says about halfway down, advise chair of precinct official assignment to help ensure each precinct is properly staffed with precinct judges and election assistants. I have to find it again, but it's in the manual. It says that we appoint precinct officials and we cannot delegate that.
No, so you have a meeting coming up in August the 22nd where we'll show you who we have. And we also send out an email to both of our party chairs to review if they make changes. Once everything is set in stone by the chair, both chairs of each party and ourselves, we present that list to the board and then you make the final decision of that.
And I have a question about how that happens. So are you or your staff reaching out to people to ask them if they want to be election judges?
Yes. So we already, what we did is we sent out to everyone that's already been appointed as a judge or assistant. We asked them whether or not they still want to become that. They have responded back. We put it on our spreadsheet. We have a spreadsheet that shows us where we're lacking for assistants or judges. And then we send them out to the party to let the party know what's taking place. The parties can make an appointment of either somebody that's already within the precinct to move them up or put a new person in. Then once we get that list back, we'll compile it all together and then we present it to you at that appointment of the precinct meeting, which is August the 22nd.
Okay, so I have a question about filling vacant chief judge positions, because both Tony and I left chief judge positions to come on the board. So how are you handling that?
So normally what we do is we look within who's in the precinct already, who has a number amount of years. And if they're another Democrat within your position, we try to move them up. But like I said, once we even do that, we still give it to the chair and let them know what we've done to see if they still approve. If not, they still have the right to put somebody in there or find someone. And then after that is completed, we give all that information to the board.
So I'm not, I think maybe we want to propose, but I'm not going to want to make a motion, but maybe we want to discuss it
Let's see if
further.
there are any other questions.
Okay.
Are there further questions, clarification on
Other than the fact that by statute, the judges are supposed to be 50-50 between Republican and Democrat if we can get there. Of course, we've tried that in the past and it's not always possible to do. So that is the goal, and that's why the Republican county chairman and the Democrat county chairman submit names that then she basically has to say why she can't use them in that slot. So she's been actively recruiting. I'm sure the Democrats have been actively recruiting, and Republicans are trying to find people who want to be the chief judge or just a judge. And it's tough. I mean, it's a lot of work and not everybody signs up for it.
But I think we should know the chief judge should be a Democrat and one of the other judges should be.
Well, sometimes that's hard because I have Democrats in my precincts right now that sometimes they don't want the responsibility. And so a lot of times I have in some of my precincts, like, they're happy being assistants, they don't want the responsibility. And I have to have at least 3 judges within that precinct. So in some cases, we do our best to make sure that it's in that order. But if I have somebody who doesn't want to do it, sometimes my chief judge or my assistant judge may be an unaffiliated, or they'll be a Republican because they just don't want the responsibility. So we were glad when you and Tony picked up from when the person left, but then in your precinct now, I only have one other Democrat, I think, in the precinct that's like, And so we're trying to convince people it's not as bad as you think it is, and you'll have help, but a lot of times they don't want that responsibility. And Amy can tell you a little bit more too.
Okay, so first of all, I'll stand up, so I think you have to so with judges and chief judges, we do not like to put somebody brand new in that position because that is a lot of responsibility. There's paperwork, there's picking up supplies, there's laws that they need to know. So, and Holly knows this, and so does Antoinette. So, yes, we take the recommendations of the 2 parties. However, if they've never worked elections, we like in Holly's, so what I'm gonna do is, or what we're doing is I would talk to the 2 judges right now and ask if anybody's interested, okay?
They're both Republicans.
I understand that, but you're not being reappointed.
Right.
I don't have to, it's not really a vacancy. You're not being reappointed. So I believe the statute doesn't require me to fill yours with another Democrat. That's only a vacancy in the middle of a term. You have to read the statute, and I'll double check
Yeah, I
that.
want you to read the statute, and
Okay,
we need to discuss that.
But we typically go to the judges first because they work that precinct, they know the voters in those precincts, and we try as hard as we can to get folks that's their home precinct. Now, of course, there are times when we don't have judges or chief judges that they work in precincts that are not their home precincts because I don't have like the mixture that I need. We need to make sure, I believe the statute says, I need to make sure that not all 3 judges can be in the same party. So what we look for is, we look for 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, 1 unaffiliated, that's our ultimate goal. But I can promise you, like Twan said, that is not always the case. I mean, unfortunately, I can't, and certain precincts, now I have some people that are willing to go back and forth, but when we start to get into the, like Westmore and DHR and things like that, not so many people are willing to travel that far. So, for instance, Westmore, I have 2 Republicans and a Democrat. A lot of my poll workers, the majority of those poll workers in that precinct are Republican. Now I do have the 1 Democrat, so she is a judge. So it's things like the same thing with South Southern Pines. The majority of those poll workers are Democrats. So in that precinct, I have 2 Democrats and a Republican. So it really balances out. It just depends on the geographic area. So, but for the most part, we try to balance it out between all of them. So right now, we're looking at the judges and chief judges, so, we try to get the number, if I have 13 Republicans, I try to have 13 Democrats and 13 unaffiliated. But sometimes it doesn't always work that way. So, but we try to take, I am hesitant to put someone who's never worked an election in that position. We did it last time, and it was kind of a nightmare. So unfortunately, and unfortunately, it's a nightmare not just for them, because that's a lot of pressure, but then for the other 2 judges that have been there, and they spend so much time explaining, and meanwhile, the election's going on, and there's so much to go on, and that's one of the reasons why we try not to, we want them to start off as assistants, get a few elections under their belt, so they kind of know the routine, what goes on, and just like Antoinette, you were a judge for how long? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you were a judge you started off as an assistant.
I did.
So, and then she was a judge, and then, she was appointed chief judge. Ultimately, that would be our goal, to kind of work your way up. So, and that's what we try to do, because we hate throwing somebody to the wolves and under the bus, so to speak, so, because it is a lot of responsibility. So, but that's what we typically try to do the first, when we make a recommendation, those judges and chief judges are folks that have worked a number of elections, just to, so that they're comfortable. We don't like our poll workers being uncomfortable and stuff. We want it to be a pleasant experience so that they come back. Right?
Thank you for your comments, Emery. I am in no way suggesting that we want to put inexperienced poll workers and
No, I
chief
know,
judges.
yes, it just happened, it has happened before, and it creates a lot of, I don't even know what the word, there's anxiousness on that new person, because they're given all this responsibility that they've never done before, and I feel that ruins the experience for them.
Well,
You know,
and the voters.
And the
And,
right.
yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. We're trying to make sure this is a pleasant experience for the voters. And when you have a chief judge that, can't answer the questions and is constantly having to call us, which we don't mind them calling, but I think the voter sees that and they may lose confidence that we're putting people in those positions that can answer their questions and know what they're doing. I mean, our main goal is to make sure our voters have a pleasant experience and that they have confidence that we're putting the people that need to be put in those positions on, and they're knowledgeable and things like that. So that's really one of the other ultimate goals, is making sure the voting experience is pleasant and they continue to have confidence in us.
And Tawana, am I correct that you're already working with the chairs of the parties to go over the people who worked as judges to try to identify?
Yes, ma'am, that's what we've been doing. So like even today, we have a new members class, that's starting at 5:45. We had one yesterday. We had a really good turnout. So we're recruiting and we're trying to make sure that every precinct is represented, so that way we can get that list to each of the parties in a timely fashion, so they can see and check what's going on and get back to us before that meeting time.
So, I don't know, do you want to entertain a motion to change the date?
I guess I'm not sure whether to say this after a motion has been made and seconded as part of the distinction. Just a reminder that what we're talking about is the overall description of the director's duties. And here's one item. So I have a thought about that maybe I'll reserve until we get to the point of discussing the motion. So we want to, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that under the administration of the elections office, we strike the second sentence that says screen hire and direct training and just use the sentences, the second sentence that starts with that because they're redundant. And the second sentence has something at the end that isn't in the first sentence. Do you agree with that? I mean, does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then, since we haven't dealt with whether we're gonna delegate the minutes, that can stay in there. I want to address that. And I'd like to revise the advise chair of precinct official assignments to present proposed precinct official assignments to the board for approval, which is in accordance with information in the packet that you gave us as something that we have to do and it can't be delegated.
Repeat that.
Instead of advised chair or precinct official assignment, that it say, what did I say?
Proposed.
Propose to the board, the precinct official assignments for approval.
So that's the motion. Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Is there a discussion of that motion?
Madam Chair, aren't we already doing that, or don't you give those names to us for approval?
Yes, but I understand what she's saying. Instead of saying, advise, she's saying, I'm proposing the list so that if there's any changes, you just make the change.
Okay, you're comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we didn't change, did we, that it will be up to the director to hire, that we will delegate to her the authority to hire people, correct?
She says it's in the statute.
Right.
I want-
That's not part-
That's not part.
That's not part of the motion.
No, that's not
Okay.
part of the motion.
Just clarifying.
Right.
This is only about judges.
So it was about striking out the second line and revising from advising to proposing.
Okay?
Is there any other discussion of the motion? All right, now I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next item is, what page? Discussion of one stop plan.
So the municipal one-stop plan is due to this date of August 4th. I gave the board members the 2 suggested plans, also some data concerning why. As we know, the municipal election is actually built to the municipalities. We have 11 municipalities, but only 3 of the municipalities do not participate in early voting, which is Robin, Cameron, and Foxfire. So I gave you the numbers of each municipal election that we had and the numbers. It's sad to say that during the municipal election, the turnout is not as overwhelming as everybody would like it to be, but it's a municipal election. And so the proposal was to extend the time for at least people to get here from either the 8 to 6 and 2 Saturdays, or from 8 to 7:30 and 2 Saturdays as well for the municipal election. And so I just wanted to know what the board thought about the proposal, the numbers, if there was any question.
I have one question for clarification. I believe in 2, it's the weekday voting is 8 to 7 rather than 8 to 7:30.
We were trying to make it even a number, because during an odd number year, I don't have to follow the general statute of 8 to 7:30. So we were trying to make it at least an even number of time, so that co-workers wouldn't have that half a time. So it would be 6 hours, no, it's 11
I
hours.
think they do
So they would do like, we split one stop, so we would split it, so they would be an even amount of time, so that's
Right.
why I did the 8 to 6.
Thank you, I agree, and maybe I misheard, but I thought when you first introduced it, you said 8 to 6 or 8 to 7:30.
Yes, I did. The first one was 8 to 6, and then I did say that, so I meant to say 8 to 7. So that way it would be just an even amount of time between the two shifts.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yes, sir.
Can I just interject something there? That may be true that there's an even amount of time between the two shifts, but when you're closing, you end up staying well past that 7 o'clock.
Well, they have to be there early too, so I meet, or Andy will meet them, we meet them at 7:15 to make sure everything is set up, and then by the time they close, so it's gonna be slightly off as far as coming in the morning and closing, but as far as, that time frame, it's somewhat even, so, yes. So my morning shift will probably have maybe 45 minutes in. My evening shift may have maybe, depending on how many people come in, 45 minutes as well, give or take.
Are there any other questions for clarification?
I had a question. I'm interested in knowing whether we've ever had Sunday voting for municipals in Moore County.
Not that I'm aware of, any. Ms. Holly wants to know about Sunday voting for Moore County.
Have we ever had Sunday voting for municipals? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, I can probably go look, but I feel as if it was just in, the first time we did Sunday voting was in 2020. I don't know that we did Sunday voting in 21 municipals. Do you want me to go run up and check?
I believe we did do 22.
Yes, but-
22, yeah, the big,
But the
I
municipals
think
from
the
this point
municipals,
on
we
now.
didn't do Sunday voting. The big ones.
Because I was interested in knowing if we had a history, how many people voted
Yeah.
on Sunday.
I don't
We
think
never-
we do, but I can go, do you want me to go check?
That would be helpful. Thank you. And maybe Karen knows, if Twana doesn't. For municipals, have we ever had more than one site?
No. And like I said, because with the municipalities actually pay for the charging. So they will pay for the poll workers, they pay for, which I have an invoice for some of them. So I had 2 municipalities who already called me, and they go back from what we charged them from the last municipality, because that's how they figure out their budget for this go round. And so we charge the municipality, even though the county covers it, we wait for them to reimburse us back. So they get charged for everything concerning this municipality, concerning this election, including the work that the board does as well. So they will pay for the precinct workers, they pay for the board members' expenses, they pay for, if we have any type of absentee by mail, they pay for the postage. And so with some of the municipalities, we have some that are smaller like Bass, and then some who are bigger, like the Village of Pinehurst, their prices do fluctuate. So in 2021, just for Pinehurst, they spent $21,000. But for a municipality like Bass, it was like $5,000. And so we try to, that's why I said making the hours longer, it won't be as big of a stretch for the municipalities to pay, because we don't know what the cost is going to be. I know postage was going up. We know that in some other aspects, costs have gone up. My ballot printing might go up, hopefully not by much. So they have a little wiggle room. But then when you're talking about doing 2 sites, then that's double the amount of precinct workers, that's double the amount of ballots that I have to order. And I don't know if the municipalities are going to be able to handle that big of a cost jump that they're not used to. So that's why we normally just keep it to the one site. That's why I was proposing the longer hours, so that anybody coming from a different end can get here and not feel rushed getting through the traffic, so that they're able to vote.
All right. So when you say that,
So I checked both 21 and 19. municipals, no Sunday.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. When you said that different municipalities pay a different amount, how is that prorated based
So
on?
basically, we do a big total, like, so when I order a ballot, say if my ballot came to like 20,000, that's just low end. Then I split that 20 among all, even though we may have one municipality having more ballots than another. Whatever that final balance is, it gets split between all. So like advertising, that's a pro share rate. The board members' expense is a pro share rate. The absentee one-stop workers, that is a pro share rate. So everybody gets that,
Got it.
gets that amount. The only time it gets kind of personal is when it comes to precinct workers, because they're within that precinct of that municipality, they'll get the fullness of that. So only time the precinct workers, they get the full balance, our poll books that we have to order, they'll share. And so we try to do our best to balance costs that everybody is using, but there are some costs that specific to that municipality.
Thanks, that's helpful. Are there further questions for clarification? All right, then I'll entertain a motion related to one stop, and of course, this always seems like an interesting title to me, because of course it covers all early voting facets, not just people who are registering and voting on the same day, which is what one stop voting means to some people. So excuse me.
Well,
Is there a motion?
I think it's also, before I make a motion, or anybody else does. A lot of people don't understand that one stop is a form of absentee voting. And I am interested in knowing how the people in the three municipalities that don't allow absentee voting, how do we communicate to those folks when we're talking about one-stop voting, that they don't have that option?
Oh, so we have to send out advertising, so they'll know.
Okay.
And plus the municipalities, they already, it's in their chart, so they know as well. But we do, after we get closer to the election, I will send an advertisement out into the paper to let people know who's participating in early voting, who's not participating in the buffer zone. That's, will also go into the paper, so we put it in the paper as well.
Do you have, I'm assuming people end up turning up at one stop who can't vote because they're in one of those
Yeah,
municipalities?
they don't know what the municipalities are. Sometimes people who are in the outskirts of the ETJ will try to come, but our system will let us know that.
Right.
We can't do it, but we do have some, but we do stress the municipality, but municipality.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarification? Is there a motion relative to one-stop voting?
Is there a specific plan we're going to be voting on?
I think that depends on who makes the motion and what the motion is. There are two plans that were presented, as Dixie said, one. They're virtually identical except for plan one has the one-stop voting sites open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and plan two from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, then I move we accept Plan 2 for one-stop voting.
I second.
Okay, any discussion about that? Just briefly, if y'all will indulge me for a minute. In accordance with the oath that I swore last week and my commitment to fair and accurate elections and ensuring as many Moore County citizens can vote as possible, if I had a magic wand, I would say let's have more days, more hours, more than one site throughout the county. However, I do acknowledge the realities that some of which we've heard historically, significantly lower turnout in municipal elections, the challenge that when it comes to securing poll workers, the logistics that will be associated with the new ID requirements, the extra logistics associated with one-stop voting, and making the IDs, that I can endorse Plan 2, as was proposed in the motion, and I do agree that that extra hour could be those weekdays would be appropriate. Looking ahead a little bit, but not trying to get too far out ahead of my skis, I don't believe that this plan will be adequate for next year's primary and general election. But we'll deal with that when we get to it. So, thank you. Are there any other discussion of the motion? And then I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 So,
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Thank you. Next item, the delegation of secretarial duties. Talked about that a little bit, but Donna, if you could bring us up to speed on that.
Yes, sir. So normally, even though the board does select the chair, the board can delegate those duties to myself. I would ask if that could be possible since Ms. Antoinette is new to the process so that she's able to participate, because I know for even for myself, trying to write down and listen and make sure I'm catching everything can sometimes be difficult, even though we do have the live stream and we do have the recording, but that is still a decision that is up to the board, but that is what I'm just proposing. So that way she can kind of get further into it and be a little bit more comfortable with what's taking place with the board.
Thank you. Are there any questions for clarification?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Several places in the materials you gave us, in the statute, it talks about delegating to you. It's my understanding that in the past, staff members have done it.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have the right to delegate. When we delegate it to you, are you delegating it to someone else?
Now, from what I'm aware, if it's delegated to me, then I would just do it. I think in times past, it was delegated to the staff member, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know.
We probably ought to differentiate between delegating responsibility and delegating authority. You always will have the responsibility for actions. You can delegate the authority to carry it out within the staff. So I think we need to understand that's the difference there. She will always be responsible once we delegate it to her, but then she can delegate the authority to carry it out.
Subject to her review afterwards?
Yes, correct.
And normally that's what I've done, so even though it's given to someone else, I still review it, and then the board, so it's reviewed 3 times, so staff, myself, and then the board. And then once the board reviews it, it goes back to me to whatever corrections, and then that's just how it kind of plays out.
So it seems to me that that makes sense. However, it seems that it should go back to the secretary for review and possible edit before it comes to the board.
So, okay,
In other words, if we delegate to you,
Mhm.
whatever you decide to do, whether you do it or delegate the actual creation of the minutes and then you review it,
Mhm.
then it seems that it should go from you to the secretary, or the secretary's review and edits it
So
needed before it comes to the whole board.
Oh, so normally if she gives it to me and okay, I see what you're saying. So yes, it would do that until it's completed, but you still have the final revision. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yeah.
But it would go to Tony before it came to the whole board.
Normally it goes, we usually send it to the whole board for the whole board to review.
I don't think that's
That's not-
consistent with the statute.
Because normally, I mean, we can send it to Tony per se by herself, but then if it goes back out, usually what I try to do is make sure that the whole board is aware of what we've done, including the secretary, so that if there's any changes, the whole board has the opportunity to make the changes. So then by the time you come back to the meeting, those minutes are corrected and then they're just straight approval. So is that what you're not wanting? You're just wanting it to go straight to Tony? Everything is done and then go to the board and then you have a discussion and if there's anything that still needs to be corrected,
Yes.
you want that to be done in the meeting as well? That's up to you to decide.
Well, I think otherwise, the fact that we've elected Tony the secretary is meaningless because she's serving no duty, she's not performing any duties, different from the other board members. And we elected her our secretary for a reason. So either she's going to create the minutes from the recording herself and we're not going to delegate it, or if we agree to delegate it, then they should come back to her for review and if possible edit before they come to the whole board.
So I guess one of the answers would be send it to Antoinette. She says, yes, I agree, or no, I don't. Then it comes back to you. Then you send it to us before the meeting. So if we see anything that's an issue, we can come back and say, we think that's a mistake. It gets corrected so that theoretically, when we come to the meeting, it's a yes or no. It should be a yes. We've already done the screening. So I think I kind of concur a little bit with Holly. The secretary should screen it first, comes back to you, and then you send it out to us before the meeting so that we can say, yeah, we're good with that. Comes to the meeting, we're done.
That sounds good.
Mhm.
I want to add one thing. I think if it goes to Tony for that review that you just described, and Tony thinks it needs to be edited, she has that right to edit it.
Oh,
when it
absolutely.
comes to us.
Yes, but then when it comes to us,
It should be,
on an informal basis, if we see something, then we go back
Yeah.
and say, I think this is wrong, it needs to be changed. We all say, oh, you're right, we missed that. And then when it comes to us at the meeting,
It should
it should be a done deal. Get rid of all this other stuff, otherwise we spend a lot of time going back and forth, and you've got to redo the minutes, little informality, but I do agree. Let Antoinette get the first cut,
Okay,
then you send it to us after she's done the first cut.
well, after everything is then finalized. Or is that what you're saying? Yeah. So once you finalize, then send it to the board and that should be it. Right, correct.
After she's looked at it, it comes to us, hopefully we won't find anything, and then when it comes here for the next meeting, we're done.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, so-
Working on it.
Will you just go over that again so we can get that?
So basically, if this is proposed, what she's saying is that if the duties are delegated, then the minutes will go back to Tony for her to make any edits and revisions. It comes back to us to make the correction, goes back to Tony so she can make sure that those corrections was made. And once she says that these minutes are good or finalized, then it will go back to the board as a whole.
Okay, so is Tony sending them to the board or does it come back to us and?
No, Tony's not sending it to the board.
Okay.
Tony's sending it back to
Okay,
the
so
office.
I just wanted to make sure she had that right.
You send out 2 emails, one to Tony, here are the minutes, do you agree? If she says yes, or even if she makes a change, it comes back, then you send a second email out to us saying, here's what the secretary has approved for minutes, do you agree? And if we come back, looks good, then on board meeting time, it comes in, and we're done.
You ready to go with that?
I just want to make sure she did that.
It's another email, but I think Holly raises a good point.
I think also that it's important that we kind of talk about a time frame for the creation of the minutes and getting them to Tony to review. So do you have?
Well, the thing, usually because your meetings are usually just called as needed, there'll be plenty of time because I like to, at least give the board, so say if you call the meeting next Friday, I do my best to get the meeting back out to the board at least by Wednesday to give you 2 days. So by the meeting date, 2 days prior to that time, you should have everything.
Just remember they have to go to Tony first.
Yes, I know, that's what I'm saying, but it should, if we have a meeting, everything is gonna be like back and forth so that we can at least get it back to you within 2 days so you can review.
Okay, thank you.
Are you all happy, Anne, with the wording that you found, or is somebody taking, I mean, I had,
She's got it down. She had arrows, I had.
Okay.
You know.
Do we want to come up with the final wording or do you want to work on that and have us discuss it next week? or whenever we meet next.
So are you
Do I
making a
know how
motion
to
to
word it?
delegate? You can do it now. If not, we can wait.
Right, I think that's the first.
We need to decide how we want to word the step of it going to the secretary.
Okay, then I move that when the minutes are put together by the staff, they are then sent to the secretary alone for the secretary to review, say yea or nay on. It comes back to the staff, and then the secretary has blessed it. Then it comes to us for our second cut. And as long as there's no comments, then those are the minutes that come to the next meeting for us to sign off on.
I second that motion. What was your motion?
Yes,
That's the motion, right?
I second that motion.
okay.
Moved in discussion, excuse me, moved and seconded. Any further discussion about that motion? I guess the only thing I would say is, you know, presumably then, in these minutes about taking the minutes, we will have with the language that appears in the minutes relative to this motion, that will be one of the things, obviously, that goes to Tony and then, you know, for consideration, and then back to you and then to us. Okay. That gives us an opportunity.
And then Internet becomes responsible for the minutes. We're back to the responsibility authority. She's been elected as the secretary, so she is responsible for the accuracy of the minutes, but hopefully we give her enough input that when all is said and done, she's signing up on something that's accurate.
Exactly. So, any further discussion?
Do we need to develop the sentence that addresses it coming back to Tony in the resolution? Do we need to iron that down today?
I think my question was that implied that getting the exact wording of that whereas statement in the motion is one of the things that we could edit or correct when it comes to us in the minutes, as opposed to trying to hash that out right now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, they can sit down and put it into clear, concise English.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any further discussion? All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, resolution on absentee procedures.
Yes, sir. So with the absentee procedures basically consist of, as absentee ballot come into the office, the staff has the ability to check for any type of deficiencies, make corrections, going back out to the voter, sort of in different types of categories. But the board still has the approval, but we just do the foot legwork as it comes into the office. This is something that is not always done, I won't say always, but we do that so that by the time you come to your first absentee meeting, we've already covered all of those bases. And so you just have to come in, Carrie will give the report about how many you have. If something came in that was a cure, we checked signatures. But what we always have done in prior meetings, we allow the board to spot check absentee requests. And I would still prefer for us to continue to do that. So if you had 100 that came in, you may pick out 25 just randomly that the board will review themselves behind our work to make sure signatures are there, witnesses are there, so that you know that we're doing what it is that we're supposed to be doing. So that's the delegation of the absentee.
Right. Any questions for clarification?
I am curious, are we able to verify signatures with registration cards now or not? On the absentee ballot?
Not at this moment.
That's still pending. Okay.
Now, the difference with this municipal is I believe that it's gonna be with the ID. That's gonna be the biggest thing for the board to be able to look at. is making sure that when absentee ballot requests come back, the ID process, we still don't know what the ID process is going to look like yet because we haven't gotten that guidance yet. But that would be the biggest thing that the board would need to, focus on, is making sure that people have sent their IDs back to verify that ballot is legit. But we'll also get that report as well when we come to our first absentee meeting.
I'm a little confused. Do we have a resolution to consider?
Yes, ma'am, it's in, did I give
We
you
don't
that?
I don't,
We don't have that.
I don't put it in that packet.
No.
no.
I'm looking at it here, I'm sorry.
I don't think we have
That's right.
any of these resolutions.
Oh, so this is a resolution for delegation of the preparatory step for absentee ballot to staff. And basically, whereas absentee ballot container return envelope will be inspected for deficiencies prior to consideration by the board for approval. Voters must be contacted within 1 business day of when staff identify deficiencies. Whereas it is not permissible to wait for the absentee board meeting to contact the voter about a deficiency. So we do have a process. We try to make sure that as soon as we notice there's a deficiency, we go right ahead and start working on it instead of waiting for the board to come in, give us the approval. So that way they have enough time because, the mail sometimes is not very efficient at this time. Whereas ballot envelopes will be sorted into categories for board review and approval. Ballots submitted electronically must be duplicated prior to being counted. And so what we do with that process is we do bring in a balance team to duplicate paper ballots onto a hard copy ballot. They're all paper clip, but we still allow the board to check to make sure that what the voter voted is correct on the ballot. So the board will still have the opportunity to review electronic ballots as well. The list of ballot envelopes must be verified against the absentee poll book so that we're making sure that we have the correct numbers. So you will get a list during every meeting of how many ballots came in for that meeting, and you will call out and you will verify that those ballots are actually existing and nothing has been taken or added away. And once the continuing return application has been approved, the envelope shall be opened and the ballot inserted into the N100 tabulator. And basically, that is the resolution for the absentee procedures concerning the absentee meeting.
Okay. And the full text of that resolution would be included in our minutes?
Yes.
We have just, okay, thank
The absentee ballot process is time consuming.
you. But it is, that sounds good to me. Just incidentally, and doesn't, I'm not looking for absolute accuracy. Historically, can you give us a sense of how many absentee ballots you've found necessary to cure, not necessarily numbers or percentages, and what the result of that was once you got in touch with the voter who sent in the
Now, during a municipal hearing, did you have a lot?
I can't remember the municipal, but I do remember this last election, and I think I only cured maybe 20 that needed to be cured.
right.
So the number's not that large. Most people do it correctly. But I will say it can only be cured if the voter's signature is missing or in the wrong place. If anything's wrong with the witness information, we have to reissue the entire ballot.
Gotcha. But you said you do that.
But yes, we
It's
do
not just
all
a
of that
simple
when we
cure.
get it in and we notice it and.
Right.
The one difference for this election will be the ID requirement.
Yes.
So if they fail to either provide an ID that meets ID requirements, or they do not fill out the form saying why they were unable to, is that a curable issue, and will you contact them immediately about that?
We don't have guidance on how we would handle that yet.
You ready?
Yes.
Because that could be extremely time consuming, because there could be quite a few votes.
There could be. But again, that's kind of a whole new, thing, so we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, we're gonna learn a lot.
Yes, we're all gonna learn together.
The ballots that are transmitted electronically, are those the military?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Thanks.
do you normally have a large volume of those?
In a smaller election, no, but in your next year election, yes, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions for clarification? Do we have a motion regarding this resolution?
I move that we accept the resolution as presented.
Second,
A second?
any discussion of the motion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes, aye. The motion carries. Thank you. Next item, resolution of out of precinct voting. And we don't have that in our package.
I'm sorry, she asked me.
Do you need this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that what-
That's what you, that was the.
Oh, that
absence.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so now, on the,
Do we need? Yeah, do we need to
Decide,
vote?
but I'll get everybody
Okay.
decide when you get done.
we will, yeah,
Okay, so that one's,
thank you.
so the next one is what now, I'm sorry?
Now we are on the
Out of
resolution of
precinct.
out of precinct voting.
Yes, sir, so, and I'm sorry, I thought I sent it to you. So with the out of precinct voting, we have to do this every year. It just, the state has us cover those individuals, what you're about to see. Sometimes you may have people that are in a municipality, but we have a precinct that is not open, and so we have to transfer people to make sure that they're able to go into a precinct that is actually open. So in this one, or sometimes we have a municipality that doesn't have a precinct within its municipality, and we use something that's adjacent to that precinct for our voters to use. I'm not quite sure here what precincts those are, because I think everything's covered, but we just want to make sure. So in this one, it is the Moore County Board of Election has surveyed all voting places to be used in the upcoming municipal election. The Moore County Board of Election has determined during review of the county that there continue to be no facilities adequate to serve as a voting place located within the East Norwood, Pinehurst A2, Pinehurst B1, Pinehurst B2, and Pinehurst C precinct. Whereas the Southern Pines Fire Station number 2 is adjoining the precinct boundary and has previously served as a voting place for East Norwood as permitted by General Statute 163-131. Whereas the First Baptist Church of Pinehurst is adjoining the precinct boundary and has previously served as the voting place for Pinehurst A2 as permitted by 163-131. Whereas the Senior Enrichment Center is adjoining the precinct boundary and has previously served as a voting place for Pinehurst B1 as permitted by General Statute 163-131. And whereas the Pinecrest High School is adjoining the precinct boundary and has previously served as a voting place for Pinehurst B2 as permitted by 163-130.1. And whereas the Fair Farm is an adjoining the precinct boundary and has previously served as the voting place for Pinehurst C as permitted by 163-130-1. Whereas the use of these facilities does not unfairly favor or disfavor voters regarding race, age, or political party affiliation. And whereas these locations continue to meet all requirements for accessibility for elderly and disabled voters and have been inspected by the Moore County ADA compliance officer and the members of the Moore County Board of Elections and staff. Whereas this is a request for continuing use and notice to voters would not be required. Therefore, be it resolved, the Moore County Board of Elections, by your vote or unanimous vote, does respectfully request the approval by the executive director for the continuing use of these adjoining facilities, having demonstrated the requirement of 163-130 has been met. And so, I'll give you those names again. So for East Norwood, Pinehurst A2, Pinehurst B1, Pinehurst B2, and Pinehurst C, the facilities that they're using are as an adjoining to a precinct, but they're not within that precinct. Most of our voters are already familiar with it. It hasn't caused any disruption in the voting, but we just have to always get approval by the state to continue to use those precincts since they're on an adjoining precinct line.
Thank you. Are there questions for clarification? It's minor detail probably. I missed the suggested site for East Norwood.
So for East Norwood, they use the Southern Pines Fire Station number 2.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Have there been any issues with voters voting at these locations in the past?
No, ma'am.
I did work at that East Norwood precinct once as a judge. I didn't realize we had so many places where we did. Has there ever been an issue with voting at the high school? I know there are.
Yeah, really, it was, I think the only issue we had was COVID, because that lobby, we weren't able to do the 6 feet apart, so we had to move to the cafeteria. But even there, they kind of confined us to an area because they have school there.
Yeah, I know.
And so, kids were coming in getting lunch and stuff, so we have moved it back to the auditorium because there's not kids coming in and out of that area like for 3 hours. You know what I'm saying? Those, during lunchtime. And typically, they reschedule, or they try to reschedule any kind of play, theater practice, or I think theater, rehearsal, that's the word I'm looking for, or anything like that for that day, so that there's really not kids coming in and out and bothering voters. So we haven't really had a problem except for the COVID.
Is there adequate parking? And
There is that side, when you come in and you veer to the right, there's a big parking lot right there. I mean, trust me, I wish they wouldn't have school, and I'm thinking, I can't remember if it was 23, I'll look, or 24, it is a teacher work day. So, so there won't be buses running and stuff like that. So I'll look at the calendar.
and it works there to have curbside?
It does, because there's a side door that pulls up right, so most voters come in the front, all glass doors to the auditorium, but we have the curbside, there is a side door there, so they circle around and pull up to the curb, and they're serviced right there on the
And it
side.
has a ramp too, so that's
Yeah.
excellent.
So that, the high school works, I mean, it's not a large precinct, but it works. Works better than the cafeteria.
I just have a vague recollection of hearing discussion, maybe even statewide, about voting in schools. And whether schools should be closed on that day.
Yes. So,
24 they should be.
yeah, I wish they would be. I mean, I think, was it last year? I think, maybe a teacher worked it. So I don't know if it is this year or next year, but I would even want, if that's all they can give us, even a teacher workday is much better than a regular school day. So
Are there any alternate locations that are?
I don't think not to cover the precinct, that's like, or where the voters, so that they don't have to go too far. I think that's one of the issues. There's really not.
And then ADA for us It's different for ADA when it comes to those buildings. The Justice Department is very strict on our ADA when it comes to building location. So that's why we've always, like, we're about to go out and do an assessment of our buildings to make sure there has been no changes. Because what a normal person, a building inspector think is ADA compliant, for that building is not ADA compliant for us. So it's very hard to find a building that has all of those factors.
Okay, so this November, it's a required workday for staff, no students, in 23.
Great.
So let me check, they already have the 24-25 calendar. When is the election? It's November 5th, right? Same thing. So it is a workday in 2024, in November. Let me see, March.
And we don't know about that.
Primary.
We're open.
March, it's a regular school day.
That's
Now-
something that could be brought to the school board's attention to see if they want to take action.
Now, of course, the primary, the numbers aren't as high in the primary as, of course, a general. So, I mean, we can definitely bring it to the school board, or, I think our contact is Ms. Purvis. She is the superintendent of, I think it's superintendent of operations. I forget her title. It used to be John Barath. Whatever John Barath was, that was my contact at the central office to arrange anything like that. So, and I think he left, and I believe Jenny Purvis has taken her.
As long as that primary doesn't get moved like it has in the past.
Oh, it is. Thank you.
The resolution that we're considering right now is just for this municipal election, is that correct?
Yes, so you'll look at this again next year, just so that we can continually use the out of precinct locations.
Any other questions for clarification? I don't think we've got a
We have this-
motion. We're going to the minute. And thank you for doing that
Oh, you're welcome.
rapid research. All right, in that case, I'll entertain a motion on this resolution.
So moved, that we
Thank you.
accept this presented.
Thank you. Second,
Second,
further discussion of the motion? All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye, and the motion carries. Next item, resolution of transfer of voters into active precincts.
Yes, sir. So during this municipal election, and I have maps for you guys to look at, if you're not aware. So this is the Eastwood, what's the fire department on 74?
Yeah.
Eastwood.
Fire department.
So this is Eastwood Fire Department, and so you have Taylortown, but there is a small section of Taylortown that is in this precinct. You have these, this right here, there's a small portion that belongs to Pinehurst. This belongs to Pinehurst, and then there's a small section in Eastwood that actually, this is Carthage, that actually belongs to Carthage. But we don't open any precincts that's not participating in the municipal election. So what we do is we actually make a transfer of those voters into those municipalities so that they can vote. So for Eastwood, I'm actually transferring one voter into the Taylortown precinct so that they'll have the opportunity to vote within that municipal election. And Taylortown, so every time we do a transfer, the state has us do a request form, and this is a temporary request form, so every year we have to always do this request form. So it talks about what precinct we're transferring the person from, how many, what precinct we're transferring the person to, and how many is actually in that precinct. So like I said, for Eastwood precinct, I have one person who belongs to the Taylortown municipality, and there's actually 500 voters within that municipality. So it wouldn't make any sense to open up Eastwood for one voter to a town just for them to vote. Eastwood also has 17 voters that belong to the Carthage precinct. So those 17 voters would move into the Carthage municipality, and there's 1,800 voters within that municipality. Then we have Eastwood again, where there's 20 voters who actually belong to West Millwood, which is the Southern Pine municipality, and they have 837. So they would be moved to that municipality precinct. And then Eureka, Whispering Pines, there's actually 11 within there that belong to Carthage, and those 11 would move down, and there'd be 839 actually voting within that municipality precinct. So those are the transfers. We do send letters out to everyone so that they are made aware that they're temporarily just being moved to that municipality. And we also place it in the paper as well, so that they're also aware. But we actually send each voter a notice so that they know for that election, just for this election only, that that's where they'll be able to vote if they choose to. In most cases, looking at the numbers, I didn't have too many that vote within the municipal election. They're just primary regular voters. But I do have one or two that will do so we have to make sure that they're
Right.
covered.
And you do it worth it, so that's terrific.
Yes.
Any questions for clarification about that proposal, the process? Okay, if not, do we have a motion to accept that?
Move to accept the resolution as presented.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Any further discussion? We'll vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that motion carries. Thank you. Item on the agenda. Just gotten buried. Possible challenge of Taylor Town Council member.
Yes, sir. So this is just to inform the board that we were made aware of a possible challenge of a council member who signed up to run for the Taylortown council seat. We've had two who have called so far to make the complaint. However, there's a form that they have to fill out to create the challenge, and that the board will have to have a hearing on. And they've spoken directly to Annie, so I'm gonna let her.
Yes. So, one actually is another candidate who I did send a challenge form and challenge guide to read over. So that candidate said that they would get that back to me. Another one is the town clerk. And I have checked with the state board of legal department, and so basically, at the time of filing, the candidate needs to be a resident of that municipality, because he actually registered with us, yes, he changed his address the day before with DMV. Remember, it came through?
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so he had gone to the DMV to do a change of address. So, it came into us that morning he came in to file. So as of the day before, I have the date, he should have already been living there 30 days. So hopefully they have to fill out the form, have it notarized, and get it back to us by next Friday. Because then there's time limits on how we do the hearing. So the person being challenged we have so many days to notify that gentleman, and then so many days before we need to have the hearing.
Right.
So the challenge guide is online at the State Board of Elections website. So, but there are certain guidelines that we need to follow in order to have that hearing. So,
Sure.
So we just need to wait.
Mhm.
So,
So I'm just letting the board know, so by the time, like she said, next Friday is the deadline for them to bring the challenge information into us. So either a week from there, or maybe 2 weeks, give or take. Once I get it, I'll probably email the board to be like, okay, what days are you
Yes.
available? So that I can narrow it down and then I can send out the notice to the person who has been challenged and anybody else who is of interest. It also gives me an opportunity to contact our county legal to make sure that she's there to advise the board on the steps that you need to take because, and also give you the information that you need to know. Because there's 3 areas that they have to prove in order to be considered for what they're trying to do.
Right.
So that's what we're waiting on, but I just wanted to make the board know, so yeah, I'll been there. Once we receive that information, 'cause like I said, Andy got a call, I got a call. Even though they call, we cannot do anything until somebody puts the formal complaint challenge down. So that's what we're waiting on
Thank
at
you.
this moment.
Any questions for clarification?
Is the candidate aware?
If they're not, they probably will be,
Yeah.
because it's buzzing at this
Yeah.
moment.
I will tell you, the candidate that called me, apparently a number of people had gone to them and asked them what was the process.
Hmm.
So when they called me, you know, they were not only telling me, but I think they were gathering information so that they could tell some of the residents. So it appears that word is buzzing around in Taylortown, so, but I don't think, until we really know that it's actually going to be challenged, I don't think we're supposed to notify him, because,
Right.
I mean,
Unless-
yeah,
Not a challenge yet.
So you made a comment about the candidate changed their address the day before
Mhm,
filing.
mhm.
And then you said the candidate needed to live there 30 days before filing? Or,
Before changing their address. So,
Before filing.
or what,
You got that 30-day rule.
well, to be a resident of Taylortown, they need to be there 30 days
before when?
before he actually changed his address, which was the day before with the DMV.
Hmm.
I checked with legal.
But no, before the
Oh,
filing.
because before he's filed, before five.
Before
Yes.
filing.
Okay,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, filing.
Yeah, okay, I just,
Because there's different rules for a candidate and a voter.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And one of the things is he has to be an eligible voter in Taylortown.
Right.
But then I had to check with legal, so it's 30 days when he filed. He has to be a resident.
Okay.
Because he's,
Just curious, how was the date of a week from filing established? That's,
So as soon as the filing period ends,
Mhm.
the challenge, you have within 10 days to make a challenge.
Right.
So that's the 4th.
gotcha.
So that's just by general statute.
Sure,
Yes, sir.
makes sense.
So, I kind of wish it would have been a little bit quicker. We're good right now because we don't have to worry about ballot printing since I have a November election. But this would have been very tight for us if we were in a primary and, that 10-day span and then trying to get the individual in because I can't proceed to anything with the ballot until this is clear, this is rectified. So in this aspect, it's okay, but in another aspect, it would be a tough term.
Any further questions? Kevin? I don't know. No, that comes earlier and there, no one can sign up for public comment.
So once we get more information, we'll let the board know and I'll see what things are good at what time, and then we'll go from there.
Right, thank you. Anything further?
You give us the 2023 election schedule. got a couple of questions on that. I'm putting my calendar together, my handy dandy iPhone. When we talk about possible times for absentee meetings, I got one day that I really needed to be a morning because I got a 5-hour drive that afternoon. So and what we ever hear, other people may have scheduling issues as well. If we can kind of look at the absentee meetings, what is a good time for everybody? I believe Susan likes mornings. Is that correct, Susan? Or do you?
What's the first absentee meeting, October 3rd?
Yes,
Yes, but we will not have any ballots because ballots do not actually go out until October 6th.
Oh, yeah.
But we are required to schedule that meeting, but we
Okay,
will cancel it when it gets closer to it.
so basically we're looking at starting on the 10th.
Yes.
So when we're kind of far out, but like we're actually ahead for this aspect. And then I realized that we were so far ahead. So when it comes to scheduling the absentee meeting, you'll actually have another meeting with us to discuss that. So if you have any ideas, you just want to jot down what times, because every absentee meeting usually meets on Tuesday. Most of the time, you can set an absentee meeting at 5:30. However, best practice is usually, especially next year, we usually bump our absentee to 2 o'clock, but I'm not sure what everybody's schedule is. So, but we will meet again. My mind is clicking a little bit faster than, we're not to this point yet. It was just to show you what your schedule is about to look like, but we will have another meeting prior to that time, so that we can lock down the times for the absentee meetings and see what's best for you. So this way, you'll get a chance to look at your calendars if you got any appointments and let me know.
Can I ask a question about the day before election day and then on election day? What time should we set aside the day before election day?
Usually the day before election day is a pre-absentee meeting, and normally,
We can't have it till 5 or after.
because we're doing pick up or
Because
drop off.
the UACAVA request, oh, that's the request deadline. I'm sorry, not the return.
I mean, she said the day before election day.
Yeah, that's the request deadline.
So normally, I would like for that day to be a little bit later, because me and another staff member, we actually go on the route to drop off equipment, and that usually takes us about all day. Normally, we don't get back until almost 2 or 3 o'clock, give or take. It may not be that bad this go around, because we don't have so many buildings to drop off at, but we do try to make sure that Carrie has enough time to check the mail to get everything in so that the precincts can get their short list that evening. So remind me again so I can tell you, because I'm not sure. And then on election day, that's also a day that you'll decide what time you would like to come in as well. Usually by statute, we have to release, the earliest you can come in is at 2. You don't have to, you can come in a little bit later. Normally what the board has done is come in, I usually held you captive, and I'll get something for you so you don't have to move. And you'll kind of recess and then wait for the precinct to close, and then you'll be here until the whole time. What I would like to do is get you acclimated to being in a little bit earlier, so that way when we roll into the primary presidential, you're kind of used to it. So that way it won't be a shock to your system when that time comes. So I can let you know that as well. Usually the board has met about 2 o'clock to look at everything and you recess. Like I said, I feed you so that way you come back, and then we just kind of wait until the precincts start rolling in, and you see the process from there as well.
And we stay till all of them?
Yes, more so everything is done to verify the information once it comes out.
So I noticed in the materials that you gave us that it said, as members of the board, we do not go out to visit the precincts on election day unless you directed us to.
So the reason why, a lot of times what happens is we put judges in place to make any type of decisions that need to be made. If you go to a precinct and something happens that becomes a conflict of interest, you have to excuse yourself. Because I understand anybody that probably goes to it, you're gonna say, I'm not gonna get involved. Oh, yes, you will. So in this way, you may just be able to go to the greeter and just speak with the greeter and get with any information, but actually going into the voting enclosure, we advise for you not to do so. So that way, if anything does happen, it doesn't excuse you from having to hear a challenge to do anything like that.
I was gonna say, I know Marty has come to my
Marty, yes,
precinct.
Marty loves, and I
She just slapped in my hand.
Well, I'm patting really gently, because I do understand, it is good for the board members to be seen by everyone. However, with everything, the way how elections have like been lately now, this is my way of protecting my board members. This is a way of the chief judge is doing the job that they're assigned to do for them to handle it. So that way, if it goes beyond their scope, then it will come to us. This way you're not influenced. It's just a way to protect.
I was just surprised by that because my experience in the past has been board members.
And it
do
usually
something.
has been that way. It really has, but just lately, the way elections have been going now, even the state board has been wanting us to kind of push that point that our board members, you can go up to the greeter, but that is just basically as far as you can go. Maybe call the chief judge to you to kind of, hey, how you doing? But, and we'll just leave it to that point.
I don't have any overwhelming desire to go to the precincts, but I was used to seeing board members come to the precincts.
I just always felt like we needed to tell the poll workers, thank you for taking the time to do this.
And he does, and usually on election day, we do ask the board members to help us to get out short lists that we haven't had an opportunity
You might take
to
some.
cover as well. So you still do go, but you just don't go in as much. So,
Right.
yes.
And also, will we get the schedule for poll worker training? And
So
are we
as-
welcome to attend that?
So no.
You know what?
So as board members, you're able to come to procedures, but everything else as a board member, I'm sorry. So that way, it doesn't, that aspect of the training is just for the staff to take care of. Like I said, we do our best to make sure that the board is not put into a position where if anything has to be voted on or challenged or done by the board, you're kept safe. You can do your job without being informed. So procedures, yes, but like law training, no, ma'am. I know y'all used to that. Law training, if it's registration, check-in, what else is there? Provisional.
Well, yeah, I do help desk, and we do help desk slash provisional, so that's really one training. So that one,
So procedures is usually just a basic overall training. If you want to attend that, that's fine. But when it comes to the more in-depth stuff,
Will procedures training include the details of review of the acceptability of voter ID?
yes, and what we're looking for right now from, because at this moment, 99 IDs have been accepted by the state. What we're looking for is actually to get some type of picture of what these 99 IDs are, so that our poll workers are aware. They'll have like a flip book, so if somebody comes and they're not sure, they'll be able to flip through those IDs as well. But yes, the state is kind of slow. I don't want to say slow, but they're moving a little bit slower on this. So we're hoping that we'll have a lot of this information prior to when we start training us sometime around November. Because we do have some counties that are actually doing an October election and they still haven't gotten anything yet.
And I think that flip book would be really helpful.
And that would be helpful too, yes.
Any other questions for clarification?
We didn't state it in the one stop in Carthage, just the one stop?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good clarification.
Want to be sure.
Anything further? All right, well, thanks, everybody on the board, Dixon, staff, few members of the public, thank you very much for coming. Please stay involved, and in the future, if you'd like to, excuse me?
Do you want a motion to adjourn?
I haven't in a minute. I'm not, and just feel free to come or sign up to make a public comment if you'd like to be heard in that way. Now, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So before
Yes,
you
ma'am.
leave, I just need you to sign.
We got to sign some stuff. I'll use this. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Sign that.
No, I said, it's not the And he said, what you told me I had to do is that.
If she approves it, it comes to us.